So we're going to be looking at this short, and the main focus is just going to be finding moments that inspire us and trying to figure out why. And this is, again, something that I like to do whenever I'm analyzing videos or I watch a movie. It's easier with a short film like this. It's only about 2.5 minutes. So once you finish it and watching it the first time, just watch it again. And whenever you find a moment that you go, oh, that was really cool, stop it and frame through it. It's really helpful. Like I said, this is something I do as often as I can, especially when you're just watching random YouTube videos or something. And it doesn't have to be animated. It could be live action as well. If an actor does some sort of facial expression that just, it makes you laugh or it makes you feel something, whether it's like sadness or you feel that moment was real or just inspires you, take a look at it. So we're going to be doing this here. Now, let's see. I'm not sure how loud this is going to be, so let me double check that my volume's not going to deafen all of you. And let's hit play here. Okay. So good. Okay. So I'm not going to play the whole thing all at once, mostly because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get copyright struck if I played all the music all in one go. But right off the bat, there's a few different shots here that are really cool. So the first one is a small shot right here of just the bubble gum, blowing the bubble gum. And what I love about this is a couple of things. One, well, actually many things. So first of all, composition. Composition here is just beautifully done. It's following the rule of thirds. If you were to cut this into thirds, I wish I had an actual grid I could overlay on this. But if you cut this into thirds, you can see that the character's face fits into the rightmost third. This creates a nice, pleasing composition. It doesn't feel like the character is too far to the side or too centered. It's just nice and clean. And what software am I using? I'm using Keyframe Pro. It's a great piece of software. There is a free version called Keyframe MP, which is really nice. It doesn't offer all of the drawing tools and things, but it's great for just scrubbing through. If you do want to do draw overs over videos that you don't have to pay for anything, Sync Sketch is really good. So you've got a great composition here. Not only do they compose this very well in terms of the spacing, in terms of the way they cut the face, they do a great job. And this is one of those things that is very tricky when you're first learning animation, is where do you cut a character on screen? So let me actually go full screen here. What we want to typically avoid is cutting at specific lines. So for example, if I have my wrist here, let's actually move the glove, and I cut my hand right there at the edge of the screen. So my hand is on screen, same as it would be up here, but I do this. It feels like my hand has been kind of chopped off and is just sitting there on the ground. It looks weird. But if I go a little lower or a little higher, right past that joint line right there, it's okay. And this is something that when you're posing things on screen, you have to be very conscious of, is these lines that are created on the body. This could be the neckline right there under the chin, the shirt line right here, the elbow. If I stretch out my arm and cut it, make sure I don't hit my monitor, like right there, that kind of feels odd. It's right at the joint. But if I go a little bit this way or a little bit this way, it's fine. There's all of these kind of lines that you have to watch out for when you're cutting. And that's on the whole body. When you zoom in on the face, it's similar. You don't want to cut like right at the bottom of the nose. It'll make the character look like their nose is resting on the edge of the screen. You'd want it somewhere in the lip. You don't want to cut right at the line of the mouth. Same thing with the eyes. And if we watch here, they're cutting the eyes very well. It's very deliberate, but we can see the bottom edge of the eyelids right there in just the amount that it doesn't distract us. They cut it at just that right spot. And it might seem like, oh yeah, well, just zoom in, done, haha. But this is a deliberate thought that went through here. Where exactly to cut on that eyelid. And whenever you have a character that's cutting the frame at any point, even if it's, for example, they're raising their hand and it cuts the screen and comes back in, you want to watch where that line is cutting. If I was to raise my hand here and cut right at the fingertips like that, it looks like I suddenly lost my fingers. It just feels weird. So even if I'm just doing that, I would want to make sure that I line up those fingers or that hand in a way that works well. Again, little thing, but it's very important that we pay attention to that. So, what else is really nice about this? Well, one thing I love is how connected the face is. If we watch the face here as she's blowing that bubble, you can feel the whole face is moving in that motion. They could have easily just moved the lips, just kind of, and that's it. And the bubble increases. They could even just hit a pose where the mouth is just like in that kind of blowing moment, and the bubble just goes out. We would have gotten it. But the whole face is connected. We can see the cheek here moving forward. As it goes, you can see the nostril being affected. You can even see, as they're animating this, even though we don't see the rest of the head, we don't see the neck, if you kind of watch the jawline right here, you can see it moving. As she's blowing, her head's going forward. So we're seeing the core body motion influencing the character even here. It keeps them from feeling robotic. All of this motion coming through. Now, not only that, they are offsetting the motion. And this is when you're starting to get into subtle motions like this, where it's a super, would be an extreme close-up of the face. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that your motions don't feel 100% connected. So, for example, as the lips are kind of pushing out, it's just pulling the cheeks as if there's a string attaching them, and that's it. There's connections, but there's also lead and follow. And if we look at this, we can actually feel, as the mouth is coming down here, it's got a little bit of an arc this way. But look at the cheek right up here. It's very subtle, but if you kind of look at the freckles, you can see it. It goes up and down. So as she's blowing the bubble here, the cheek is actually doing this. So we get this nice counter motion between them. They're still connected, but they're moving in a nice organic way. So you're getting a little bit of kind of a scrunch up of the cheeks before they get pulled down. That's a great little detail. Keeps the character alive. Now we go through here. Really good spacing on that corner of the mouth. If you were to look at just the corner of the mouth there, it goes fast. Let me mute that here so we can play it back a few times. It goes fast and then eases before pops. And look how fast that reaction is, which works really great because it contrasts with what we have before. We have this kind of slow motion of the mouth going forward, and then pop, everything snaps back. It's very fast. This is one of the big things with facial expressions that I know I suffered with when I was a student, and I see a lot of students suffer with, is we tend to not realize how fast a facial expression can move. Facial expressions can move extremely fast. So let's actually look at how fast this moves. Now, there is something that I also want to take a look at here, is the reaction time, which they do very well. If we look at this, when you're looking at this at full speed, the bubble pops and then she reacts right away. It's just kind of right there. And a very nice British guy. Oh, thank you so much for the sub. Geez, 20 months? That's almost 2 years. How has it been so long? Thank you so much for almost 2 years. Jeez, thank you. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, exactly. Where's the time gone? What have we done? So it would be nice if we could pause time. I could actually get some sleep. Although, no, I will say I'm actually getting some sleep. I just need to get more work done because I'm sleeping too much now. So if we look at the timing of this, how fast things are moving, and how they are offset. It's very well thought out. So when something happens, let's say a bubble popping, it's very easy when you're starting to block out your animation that everything starts to move at the same time. For anyone who's been in the daily sessions that I was hosting this week or any week, one of the main critiques that I give to people is things are moving all at the same time. Everything starts moving together. So if we look at this, we have the bubble going out, and then as it pops, the bubble pops, but the face hasn't reacted yet. This is great. And it's not always like this, but in this case it works because the bubble is not really influencing the face until it smacks it into right there. So as the bubble pops, instead of the face automatically starting to react to it, if we look at the spacing of the corner of the mouth, it's actually still going forward. So the bubble pops, starts to go back, and the rest of the face is still moving as if it hasn't popped yet. This creates that great offset in the motion, even if it's just one frame. Now the gum smacks into the face here, really good, and we get just a little bit of lead now in the chin. So it's hit her face, the chin, just a tiny little bit of a reaction here. The bubble has popped. It's gone from all the way over here to all the way over here in 2 frames. And in that moment, the chin has just moved there to there. That's fine, because we want that bubble to lead the action. Oh, and to answer the question, yes, this is Keyframe Pro, which I believe there is a command here. What is it, player, or I always forget. I think my commands on my thing are not working. Oh, there you go. Aha, they are working. So you can find the links there. So we get that nice lead and follow. Now this doesn't mean that once the face or the character realizes the pop has happened, we can now go into that fast motion. We're just leading with one versus the other. And then we get this nice overlap in the chin, great arcs. The whole head is reacting, so it's not just the face, the head is moving back, the core of the body. And once again, they're really pushing their arcs and their motion. So as the mouth comes back, it's not just going whoop, straight line. If we track that corner here, so the corner itself, right there. Let's take a look at that arc. That's a big arc. You don't feel it really, mostly because the rest of the mouth is kind of moving with it, so it looks like it's less of an arc. But if you actually track the corner itself, it's a pretty big arc. We could even track the lip. Let's just do the top of the lip here, and I should probably pick a color that's not green on green. So look at that. The whole lip arcs. You get that nice arc right there. And then if we track the bottom edge of the lip there, look at that arc. So we've got 3 different arcs going through here, but each one of them is adding to this. They're not just kind of sliding back. What I like is they move the lips out a lot. I feel that's missing a lot when I do reviews. Exactly. This is something I also notice as well, is when you're animating lips, there's a tendency to not do this, not let them come out and really push them out. If you watch people talking, so if I just kind of, let's go full screen here so you guys can see. And I'm going to move my camera here so I can see. So if I'm talking here, watch how far my lips move. In a lot of shots that I see animated, I see the lips doing this as people talk. They don't move, and I'm trying to do this very consciously, where I'm trying to keep my lips in, and as I'm doing this, you can see how much my nose moves as that happens. The nose moves a lot when we talk. But as I'm talking, I'm trying to keep my lips in. That's not normal. Some people do talk like that, but not most people. If I'm talking normally, look how far my lips go. I'm not trying to exaggerate this, but you can see how far they go to the tip of the nose. Like when I said nose, it almost goes at the same level. Nose. Our lips move a lot, and that's just speaking. When we're doing something like this, in the case of the shot, blowing a bubble, those lips move a lot. They also move up and down a lot. Again, something I see a lot of people miss out on is the up and down, side to side motion. As we're talking, again, full screen, watch the distance of my nose to my top lip. As I smile, it gets less. As I kind of frown, it gets more. And as we talk, it changes. So I might, well, just there, I might, and it raised up, and then I let out my breath, I exhaled, and it dropped a little bit. You'll also notice that I tend to talk out of one side of my mouth more than the other. So I'll start talking and I'm not trying to do this, it just happens. I try to talk and I tend to talk out of one side. You can see it in the nasofold there, which side is kind of more active. So when we're talking, it's not just centered and even and the lips don't move. And this is the type of animation I typically see with student work, like early on, is this kind of lips don't move, the jaw's moving up and down, and there's not really too much motion in the corners, and this is about it. It's not bad, but it's not interesting. Let's see, is there any good exercise we can try to practice lip sync? I'm not that bad, or it's not that I'm bad at it, I'm terrible. So the thing I recommend for practicing lip sync is do some quick exercises. Don't worry about doing a full shot. Don't worry about doing a 300 frame, a 600 frame epic. Just find a really cool line of dialogue. It can literally be someone just saying hello or whatever line. Like, just pick a little clip and then try to animate that line. Just that, and don't worry about the whole face. Just do the lips. So just a few words. And you just want to practice exaggerating and getting the arcs, getting into that polish of the mouth. And just do it over and over and over. And as you're doing it, really think why you're doing it. Think, why am I moving the corner of the mouth this way? How can I simplify that? Should I simplify it? You want to ask yourself these questions as you're doing these little tests over and over. Additionally, try to do different lip sync styles. So this is the other thing I tend to see a lot when people are animating lip sync, is that they animate the lips in a default style. Which, what I mean by default is you have the basic phonemes, a, e, like all those phonemes that you'll see in a studio library, and they use those, and only those. Is that bad? Not necessarily, but it leads to lip sync that always looks the same. The problem with that is that we don't talk the same way. So for example, if you notice the way I talk, right now, it's a lot of bottom teeth. Normally I talk differently than this. Normally when I'm talking, I'm more upper teeth. So I'll talk and you'll see a little bit more of my upper teeth as I'm speaking. Today I'm a little tired, so it's bottom teeth. Based on your energy levels, you'll see a different reaction in the lips. Some people talk and they keep their lips very tight. Other people talk and they don't even separate their teeth. So I could do a whole conversation and my teeth never move, which means my jaw isn't doing anything. That can work. So you want to try all these different styles and just try to exaggerate your mouth. Shoot some reference of yourself and really exaggerate the lip sync. Either make it bigger or smaller or tighter, angrier, whatever it is, and try to see if you can replicate that in your lip sync. Again, quick little tests. But that's going to be the thing that's going to get you that practice, is doing it. There's really no like tips or tricks of, oh, you just follow this little rule and haha, you're going to get great lip sync. It's just getting that practice in. And the best way to get that practice is not to worry about a big shot that's going to be on your demo reel. Just do a quick animation that's just this. Don't worry about the eyes, don't worry about the rest of the face, and just make sure that looks good. Let's see, having a mirror helps a lot, but you need to be careful to not over-exaggerate when you move the mouth. Yeah, so having a mirror on your desk helps a lot. I used to have that. Now I have a webcam, so I just turn on my webcam. The nice thing with the webcam, if you can move it, is that you can get the side of your face. So a mirror, you have to look into the mirror to see what's happening. But with a webcam, depending on your layout, what you can do is just move the webcam over. So for example, here I can just move the screen over onto another monitor, and I'm looking directly at my video right now. And I can see exactly what's happening. I can look at it from the side view, which is very helpful. So if you just kind of move your webcam around, or if you have multiple monitors, move your window around, you can actually get a 3/4 view and look at that live, which is very nice. Let's see. Doesn't feel weird seeing yourself from the side live? Not really. I've got a twin brother, so I've seen myself live since I was young. It's never really been odd. I remember Cameron and I used to have so much fun like playing in the shopping malls when they had the like full length mirrors. When our parents would go shopping, we would just kind of play hide and seek in the store, and it was always fun when we spot I found you. Oh no, that's a mirror. Oh dang it. And then we'd have to keep hunting again. It was terrible. So many times we fell for the mirrors. But yeah, so when you're doing lip sync, really watch the arcs that are created. Lips don't move they can move in a linear way, but it's not as interesting. So looking at this here, we get that nice arc right through there. Now let's actually look at the timing. It's very slow at the beginning, but then as it starts to move, we've got this one frame of motion here of the chin. But if we look at the corner of the mouth, we'll kind of use that as our main timing. So we've got here on frame 190, this is the start. Then it goes through and ends right there, 195. So this whole motion takes 5 frames. That's it. Very fast. And if you watch the spacing, they really push that ease at the end here. Look how much that ease is in. So they're really exaggerating the spacing through this, and the timing is nice and quick. It's very hard for our face to move slowly a lot of the times, just because of the way the muscles work. They're small muscles, so they tend to fire quickly. So when you have a change of expression like this, it doesn't have to be slow and even. No, it's just 4 or 5 frames. That's it. And then you just kind of hit that pose and hold. How long is this whole shot? So this whole shot here, 197 is the end frame. There we go. 142. So 197 I said. So 55 frames. So a little over 2 seconds. Not much. But look how cool it is. So when you're doing your own shots, like especially your own tests, do a 55 frame shot, a 48 frame shot, 2 seconds, and just do what they did. Focus only on the lower mouth. And you can really try to exaggerate that dynamic feel to the whole thing. Yes, and don't animate every shape. Shapes get blended together. This is why you want to look at the phonemes of the words, not the script, not the actual line of dialogue. Then how can you tell which ones are important and which ones should be blended? It's really just looking in the mirror, doing it yourself, shooting the reference, and listening to the phonemes. So listening to the sounds that are actually being created. So for example, what would be a good example here? Well, I use my name a lot. Like, my name is really weird. Bo, with too many vowels. And I've heard my name said in many, many different ways over the years. So phonetically, my name is Bo. Just that. But I've had people call me Bew. So that would be B, U, Bew. You could say I've had someone call me Bow. So that would be Bow. Or it would be more Ba, U, Bow, U, Bow. So it's the same word, but phonetically, we would have to do different shapes. This is just Bo, Biu, Bao. You can see the mouth changes. So we listen to the phonetics, and this is the same with slurring the words. So, for example, a common phrase that you see it not slurred but connected is you all. Some people will say you all separated. If you're kind of in the southern states, it's hey y'all. They connect together. So y'all. Very different. Did anyone call you Biao? Yeah, someone did. And then there was someone who called me Boo. So it was just Boo. What else? Biu, Bao, Bio. So B-O. I think someone called me B once. So like, I personally don't mind. I find it fascinating how different people pronounce the names. And even from French to English, like in French my name is, or in English my name is Bo. In French my name is Bull. I don't know if you can hear the difference, but Bo, Bull. It's just ever so slightly different pronunciation. Same thing with Cameron. In English, we say his name Cameron. In French, it's Cameron. Cameron. Cameron, Cameron. It's when you have different languages, you pronounce things differently. So phonetically, we have to watch out for that. And again, it's the same thing with slurred words. So shooting reference and really looking at your phonetics is going to be very helpful. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we prep for words. And we're kind of going into a whole lip sync demo here, but it is a very interesting topic. So when we're saying words, we don't just wait for the word to happen. So for example, right there, I was doing it. So I was going to go, if I'm going to say a word, as I was doing that, I was going, if. So I didn't just wait for the word. So I didn't go close, if, and then close again. I prepped. So I was thinking, and I went, if. My mouth opened, preparing for the word if, before I even said it. We do that a lot. It doesn't happen all the time, especially if you're talking quickly. You're not going to have time to prep for things because everything's moving very fast and everything has to be said right then and there. But if we speak more slowly, we have time to prep our words. So our mouth will start to shape things before we actually say them. So you can use all of those to create a more believable line of dialogue than just hitting phonemes, just the basic default phonemes right when you hear them, and just using the studio library. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any other questions on that, definitely let me know. And if anyone wants, I actually did a whole demo on lip sync stuff. You can find it in the videos on the Twitch channel here. I made a few of them actually. And Josh, thank you so much for the sub. Oh, thank you so much. 3 months, jeez, thank you so much. I don't know why I love this song so much. So good. Recently, not that recently, but It should be in a facial animation section in the previously recorded videos. There's some on how to analyze phonemes, so how to actually figure out what phonemes are being said, how to write it out, and then how to time it all out in an X sheet, and then how to start applying that into your animation. So, getting back to the animation here, we've got really fast timing on the face. This is a big thing with facial stuff, is when you have expression changes, they tend to go pretty quick. So we'll keep that in mind. We might look at a few other facial changes throughout the shots here just to kind of compare and get that timing. But the big thing, arcs, really pushing the arcs. And the last little thing I wanted to show here is they're animating the tongue. That's a really nice touch. Our tongue is always moving in our mouth, even if we don't realize it. It just likes to wiggle around. So when you're having a character react to something, it's nice to add that extra little motion in there. Oftentimes it's not going to be noticeable. This one's pretty noticeable, but they could have gotten away with this. It's very fast. Boop. And you don't see the tongue. It's not like it stands out. It's not the thing we focus on, but it's there. It makes it feel complete. If you don't have it in there, things will tend to feel a little weird. Okay, so let's move on to some other shots here. We actually spent a lot of time on that first one. I thought it would go really quick. Can we see the animation? Definitely. So let's go back here, and we'll try to find another spot that can be fun to analyze. So let's see. There's a zero rule that is right every single time. Exactly. The rules are there to, and actually, that's what you mean. Switch screens. Okay. See, this is how I know I'm tired. The moment I forget to switch screens, there we go. So this is the tongue I was talking about right there. Boop. If the moment I forget to switch screens is like, well, I should take a nap. So right there. Boop. If you look at it full speed, you don't even notice the tongue right there. Oop. Let me do it one more time. Oop. But if we frame through, you can see how much they're exaggerating it right there. So, I don't know why I forgot. You'd think after 2 or 3 years of doing this, it would come naturally to me now, but no, you'll forget. So yeah, animating a tongue, very important. So let's actually look for another section to analyze, just because we've been on this one for a while, the bubblegum scene. So let's take a look here. Okay, so this is just something I want to point out. I love the spacing of the finger here. If you just kind of look at I'm just going to track every second frame just to make it a little easier to see. If you look at the spacing, it's just going in a circle. The way you would probably do this, and I'm assuming the way they've done it here, is you would just have the rig where the thing goes in a circle, and you would constrain the finger to that thing and animate the thing spinning. That way the finger stays on there perfectly. But look at the spacing. As it goes through, we get this really nice exaggerated spacing from here to here, and then really big spacing before it eases in right here at the end. And it's just got this really nice motion. Now you'll notice they actually speed up right at the end as well. So let me get the spacing all on one frame here. And then it ends right there. So that's the end. This is the beginning. If you watch the spacing, it actually gets bigger right here, smaller here, and then it gets bigger again. What they're doing is that they're just using the bouncing ball principle. The bouncing ball goes up and down, and it eases into the top right there. This is the peak right here. The bouncing ball is doing this. So it's easing out at the beginning and at the end. This is just adding a little bit of ease here because it's not a bouncing ball that's actually hitting. It's a character starting the motion, so you're going to ease that out. But then it's just that bouncing ball principle. Ease in at the peak, which is there, and then go a little faster to the end. That's it. But it makes this motion feel dynamic. It feels interesting. So instead of, if we were to just do a spacing chart, what it would end up looking like is a little ease out, fast motion. Let's see, this is the middle here. And you would have kind of something like that. And then ease in like so. And so, thanks so much for the sub. Oh, man, thanks so much. 3 months total, geez, thank you so much. So, it's just having that little bit of an ease in the middle compared to doing this, where it's just fast in the middle. Doesn't make a big difference? Not necessarily, but in this case it makes it dynamic because we're not just getting an ease in, ease out right at the beginning and end and just fast in the middle. So that bouncing ball, yes, it is everywhere. I did about 30 reviews of people's work last Thursday, and I think in probably most of them, at least a good 20 of them, there was something in there that I would say, remember the bouncing ball. This section should be like a bouncing ball. And this went from body mechanic shots to acting shots, the whole spectrum. The bouncing ball is everywhere. It doesn't mean that we have to apply it everywhere, but there are many times where the fundamentals that you learn from it need to be applied or can be applied to make it more interesting. So with that, we've got this really great little motion here, great ease in at the end, and I love this. This is the thing that I actually paused for, is they could have just had the hand kind of come up and leave, but no, they added that little finger wiggle right there, and it's just such a nice little touch. Very well done. And as they're doing that, they're making sure that the silhouette is always clear, that we always get this nice distinction between all of the fingers, so they're not just kind of overlapped in a weird kind of straight line. You can see there's always clear distinction. Even here we can see both of them, even the third finger right there. So really pushing that silhouette the whole time. And have I seen the previous League of Legends animations with this character? Yeah, the Jinx shot. That was one of my favorite shots when I was a student. I believe that shot came out when I was still in Animation Mentor as a student. And I remember analyzing that all the time. I just loved it so much. Is it really that old already? Can't be. Yeah, but I loved that shot. It was just such a good music video. 4 or 5. If it was when I was a student, that would be close to 9 to 10 years now, which doesn't feel like it's that old. It can't be that old. It might have happened when just after I graduated then, because it can't be that old. Let's see. Is it possible to show shots with you to receive feedback? Maybe towards the end? Yeah. If we have enough time, I'd be happy to take a look at some work and give some feedback. It was from 2013. Okay, so that was... Yeah, I was technically still a student, but I had graduated and I was doing the workshops. So, yeah. Is that the one? It's the Get Jinxed one, I believe. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I love that shot. Or that short. It's so good. I think we analyzed it once. Either on... Maybe not on stream, but we analyzed it somewhere at one point. Ooh, there's a question. I missed that earlier. Is the usage of dope sheet paper same with dope sheet in softwares? Not really. The dope sheet on paper, I've never used paper dope sheet, and I know some studios call a dope sheet, or what some studios call a dope sheet is different than others. But typically a dope sheet in animation is a retiming tool. It's basically a way to, it's a super timeline, you could say. So for example, if I take this cube here, and I'm just gonna animate a little bit of it, and let's just kind of move it around, something like that, and then just some Z. On the timeline, you'll notice that it's just tick marks whenever we have a key. The problem with that is that it doesn't show when certain keys happen. So for example, if we look at the channel box here, everything is keyed. Next frame, everything is keyed. Everything is keyed. Oh wait, on frame 25, only the X and Z are keyed. 34, only X and Z. 39, only Z is keyed. 46, only X is keyed. If we're looking at the timeline, we can't tell that. It's just showing us that everything is keyed. So the dope sheet is basically a super timeline. It'll show you your main timeline here. So this is basically like looking at this one here. But then you can see the individual timeline of specific objects. So if I had another object here, let's say a sphere, and it had its own keys. So let's set a key on frame 1 and then just on frame 35. If I select them both, you can see on the regular timeline down here, it's just keys, all the same. We don't know which is for which object. Dope sheet breaks it down into each individual object. There's the keys for the sphere. There's the keys for the cube. Now, if I want to, I can open that up. So now let's look at the cube, and we can see the keys for its translates, rotates, and scale. I can open that up even more, and now I can actually see the keys for the translate X, Y, and Z. So it's a super timeline. It allows you to visually see all the keys and their relationships. I will say, honestly, I don't use it that much. Mostly I'll use the dope sheet if I have to do some big retiming for things, and I need to kind of retime specific objects or specific controls versus others. Other than that, I don't really use it that much, personally. I like the graph editor more. So that's typically the dope sheet in most programs. The one there was in Maya. So let's jump back into the animation here. So yeah, this really nice motion there. So this has some great stuff in here. I wanted to focus on one very specific thing, which is the camera move. And the camera move here is really well done. And for two different reasons. And this is something to watch out for when you're animating your own shots. Is camera moves that are reactionary versus camera moves that are conscious. So what I mean by that is when we're animating cameras, typically the idea is that we want to lock the camera on the character. If the character is moving, the camera should follow them. The problem with that is that if you lock a camera onto a character too much, it feels like the camera is like literally strapped onto them, which unless you're going for a very specific look, can just be weird. It just looks strange. Instead, what we want to do is delay the camera. What this creates is the feeling that a person is actually filming the shot and trying to follow the character. By adding that delay, it creates that human reaction time. So as a person, the character, the actor moves, the camera person is not going to be perfectly locked in all the time as if they've rehearsed this 100 times. No, there's going to be a little bit of a delay and maybe a little overshoot. There's going to be these offsets between the character. That is kind of a conscious movement. Now, a reactionary movement is the camera being affected by something. So in this case, watch the camera. If you watch the objects in the scene, the camera is very stationary at the beginning. It's not moving. Now this energy portal thing comes down. It hits. And as soon as it hits, if you... Hey, Tommaso, thank you so much for the sub. Oh, man, thank you so much. Aw, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. The reactionary would be something like camera moving or shaking because of an explosion. Correct. So in this case, an energy pulse is coming down. And if we watch kind of this pipe back here, you can see it hits. The next frame, the very next frame, the camera is reacting. We can see it right here. This is because the camera is being affected right away. There's a shock wave that hits it. And from there, it's shaking. So the character or the camera is actually being affected by the environment. Same thing if something heavy drops and hits the ground. That shock wave is the camera being shaken by the object interacting with the ground, which then technically interacts with the camera. But now we have a character jumping into the shot here. And you can see that the camera follows them. But you can see that it's delayed. So the character jumps right there. And the camera only starts to follow them right here on frame 277. The camera person sees the person jump and they have to wait, or there's a reaction time of what they see, and then, oh, I should follow them. And then it moves with. There's a little bit of a delay. And if we kind of count it out, so the character anticipates right here. This is the lowest point of their anticipation right there. This is the antic. And then they jump. And we go from 269 to 277. So about 8 frames before the camera follows them. Typically, if you want a camera to feel as if a camera person is following the action, which is a more natural feeling, you want to have at least 4 to 6 frames, at least, between the camera or the actor doing something and the camera following. Yes, and the posing in this is just fantastic. It's so good. I'm going to be talking about some posing stuff later on, but we can actually talk about it here. Like, they're really pushing that anticipation, that contrast where as she comes up here, they're really pushing that stretch in the pose and line of action. She comes down, squashing it down right there, really getting that compression before pushing out. And what I love is that they hit the pose and they stay in the pose. This is another thing that I see a lot of students kind of struggle with, I guess you could say. I was the same way, is as we're animating, we have the tendency to think that, well, we're animating. Things have to be animated, which means that everything has to move all the time. If I'm hitting a pose, well, let's say I hit a pose here, well, I have to keep moving and I have to then change to the next pose and I have to keep moving. No. If you actually watch people, they'll hit a pose and then they'll just stay in there. There's going to be small changes, like my hand, but the rest of me is just sitting still. And then I'll change again and I'll move again, but I hit a pose and I stay in there. Those holds, the moments that a character is not moving, are just as important, equally as important as the moments that a character is moving. Without those moments of stillness, all we get is a mishmash of motion that is not interesting and boring and just not great. So in here, you've got this big anticipation. As the character comes down, we get a lot of motion. And then if we watch here, again, they are still moving technically, but they're holding a pose. They come in here, 268. They're in this kind of compression pose. And really the only thing that is really moving for 3 frames is the arms swinging through and the body kind of arcing around. The rest is holding. It's not frozen, but it's just holding. This gives us time to register that little bit of a hold. It's not much, but it's there. Now, when she jumps, she hits this pose here. This would be where I would consider the pose kind of started. 275. And she holds that pose basically up until this point here when we start to get that S shape in the body. As she starts to fall and Now we get a big curvature in here, basically until she hits the bubble. Now, when she's holding that pose, it doesn't mean that she's frozen in that pose and just kind of like stuck. We can see that it's changing over time. We feel the feet kind of swinging out as the hips kind of fall in. So she's going from this very exaggerated, I'm going to exaggerate that curve here, there, and over time straightening out before that S shape and that nice reversal. So it's changing, but it's not constantly shifting and moving around for no reason. Let's see. I think I can skip Animation Mentor School if I just keep watching Pratt Pros and Sir. The big thing with animation schools, like just the one thing that they have over things like this is the curriculum. That's the big thing. Especially if you're starting out. I know for me, when I was first learning animation, if I didn't have a curriculum, I would be just all over the place. It would be terrible. Let's see. Do you plan on analyzing the More music video too? I see it on the MP4 on the top. Yeah, so if we had time, I wanted to do both of them. We've already been here an hour, and we've only gotten to the first 11 seconds of this one, so maybe I'll save it for the next stream. I thought, oh yeah, it'll go quick, no problem. And no, we've been here for a while. Let's take a look at that link here.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Ooh, this looks cool. Let me open this up. This is a link that Lucas shared. So, yeah, so you see here in this acting, let me actually unmute it.
Too much is wrong with me. That's the problem, isn't it?
Like, if you watch that acting, the character just holds right here.
Too much.
They just stop. They don't have to like too much and fidget and fidget and fidget and fidget or move around a lot. No, they just too much and they hold. It's not dead. They are not just frozen in place. There's a little bit of motion. The arms, you can feel that residual swinging in there. It makes it alive. So yeah, it's hitting a pose is not the same as just letting a character freeze. It's just making sure that when you hit that pose, you really try to let that pose be absorbed by the audience. And in terms of posing, really trying to make your posing visually interesting. And this is going to be one of the big things. We've talked about this a lot on streams. There's the 12 principles of animation, but then there's the principles of design. And the principles of design are what's going to help you get the appeal in a pose. So you have the 12 principles of animation. One of them is appeal. Appeal in a pose does not always mean that it has to look pretty. It just has to it has to be interesting to the audience. For example, a monster, a horribly deformed creature that's in a horror movie is appealing because it creates a specific reaction to the audience that is what should happen when they see a monster. A character that is sad and they've got tears running down their eyes and everything's just like horribly depressed is still appealing because that is what the shot calls for. Appeal, it does not mean that it looks pretty. It means that we are creating an emotional connection to the audience and that whatever is happening looks good. Not pretty, but it looks good. To get that, you need to apply the principles of design. I think there's a recording on the stream that we go over all of those, but those are things like line of action. In this case, really pushing that nice line of action and the secondary line of action going through there. Pushing the asymmetry of the pose. So she's got both arms up, but they're not even. If we kind of look at the negative space, this is how you can kind of look for twinning in a pose a lot of the times. Is if you had a character like this, and let's say I just kind of draw this out, so you've got the head here and the body kind of going this way. If I was to put the arms out, so something like this, this is not going to be interesting visually. The big reason being, if we look at the negative space, the space in here and in here, it's even on both sides compared to the head. The arms are just the same. If we look at this, look at the negative space that we get on both sides of the head. You get that shape, and then you get this shape. Very different. One's much wider than the other. This creates appeal in the pose. Even though the arms are doing the same thing, we've got a difference. They're both raised up, but they don't feel like they're just boring. You've got contrapposto in the body. Contrapposto is the opposite angles of the shoulders and the hips. Right in there. So hips are going this way, shoulders are going this way. Now, this is the thing with contrapposto, is a lot of people assume that it has to be opposite, so like this. But keep in mind, if you're drawing things out, so if I do this and then this, we can see that the right side here is higher than the left side. Right side is lower than the left side. Okay, contrapposto. But if I rotate this like this, right side is higher than the left, right side is higher than the left. It's still contrapposto. We've just rotated it. It's just a difference in angle between the two. So it doesn't mean that you have to get that full higher and lower on like totally opposite. As long as it is, if you were to continue the line here, they connect right there. They're not parallel. So that's contrapposto. There's also twist. If you imagine the hips and the chest as kind of a block here, the hips are kind of going this way. The chest is, I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit, is this way. You can see how that is slightly more twisted away from us. We see a little bit more of the side here compared to this side. Just a little bit. So this is twisting around that way, whereas this is twisting this way. This is similar to contrapposto. It adds more visual design to a pose. So they're taking all of that and applying it in here to make it visually interesting. And there's so many other things that you can push. One of my favorites is simple versus complex. I talk about this a lot. If you look at the shape of the silhouette, you've got this very nice, simple form along the front, and then this more complex form along the back. So even in the legs, you can see it where it comes out here, even the boot. Like, look at the silhouette on that side versus this side. Complex versus simple. What that does is it helps to break a silhouette from just being boring and even on both sides. Even as it comes through here. Now this side is simple, whereas this side is complex. So they change it. Let's keep going here. So many good moments in this. At this point, we're going to be here all day if I keep it up at this pace. I wanted to show another scene right here. Where is it? Okay. Right here. The way she comes in. I just really love the way she comes in, and she just hits this pose and then holds it right here. So you can see for, let's see, about 6:45 to 6:49, about 4 frames, she just holds. It's slowly moving, but it's just a little bit. Once again, it's not bad to let a character stop for a moment. But what I really love about this is the overlap in the body. So if you look at this, the way I would break this down normally, if I was animating this, is I would just look at the hips right there. And if you just focus on those, it's really just a bouncing ball. It goes up comes down, bounces right here, comes up, and then back down, and then settles. So you just get this little double bounce in there. Now, the only difference between a bouncing ball, which would kind of bounce like this, and get these sharp V shapes, is that she has a knee. Our knees and our legs act as basically support systems, which means that you're going to have a little bit more of that. But if you kind of cut the curve here, it's still a bouncing ball. So you're going to get the same principles in there. Once you have that motion, that bounce of the hips, you would just add the bounce to the chest, to the ribs and the torso. And you get a nice little overlap in there. And they do such a great job, even in the shoulder here. Like, watch how the twist of the body, as she comes down, her whole body is twisting here instead of just being locked and then twisting back right there. There's a little kind of bounce in the rotate Y of the body. Feels really nice. Now, the other thing I really like about this is that they're pushing the lead and follow. So again, I talk about this so often, everyone's going to get bored of me hearing it. Is when something starts to move, so that you've had a pause here, choose something to lead the action. When something moves, so if I'm sitting here and I start to move over, I'm not just going to slide evenly, unless I'm a robot. That creates the feeling like I'm in a rolling chair right now. It's just me rolling in my chair and the whole body just moves around with. It doesn't feel natural. Instead, one thing will lead and everything else will follow that, typically. So for example, I could move with my head first. I could move with my chest first. Or I could move with my hips first. And it's hard to see because it's just this that you're seeing right now. But those are changing the way my body is going to transition across the screen. Here, she is leading with her hips. So she's holding still. And then right here, watch those hips. So instead of the whole body moving down at the same time, chest, arm, head, all of it moving at the same time, we don't get that. Instead, what we get is hip moves down first. The body and head, look at the head, it's pretty much pinned in place. If you put a pin right there, it's not moving. The hips move down. It's dragging the chest a little bit. So the chest is kind of coming down here, but it's not moving in the same direction. So the hips are going this way. Oops. This way. The chest is being pulled along that. So it's kind of going down and being pulled by the hips versus going sideways. It's dragging. This arm is dragging along as well. So we're getting this flow right there. And the other arm is countering that motion, which creates this nice dynamic feeling. So instead of all the body parts just kind of moving that way, that way, that way, look at all of the different pulls and directions we're getting. It's visually dynamic. Even the knee is starting to come out a little bit here. It makes it interesting. And as we go through, you can see how that hip is the leading force here. And you get that nice big bounce right there. And then right across and down. So good. And how everything just drags behind along there. So good. But pushing that leading action is going to be very important in getting any character to start moving from a pause. If you don't have that, what ends up happening is the characters just feel robotic and it's just boring. So let me check the chat here. See. I also like the slow but not deep breath while he was posing after too much, so much detail, but made it real kind of feeling the emotion. Yeah, exactly. Is there any official source to learn the principles of design, like a book or PDF or something? I like the Drawn to Life series. Those are really good. Those are very simple and it's kind of animation focused, which I really like. There's 2 volumes. I would recommend those. I have both of them actually. Do I have them down here? Cameron might actually have them in his room right now. Or in his office, I should say. Our Humble Bundle Animator Books bundle any good? Let's see. Let me check this. So what books do they have in here? Let's see. I haven't read any of these. I've never actually heard of most of these, so I'm not sure. Those ones. See. Tony Bancroft, he's one of the Bancroft brothers. They worked on a lot of Disney films. That one, I think I might actually have that one. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I know they have a lot of good information. Yeah, so that's really the only book I've ever really heard of in here. If you're looking for book recommendations, if you hover over the video here, it should be like right on the right side. I have a whole list of books that I typically recommend to students and people who are interested in learning animation. The big ones are the Animator Survival Kit, Cartoony Animation, Animation Crash Course by Eric Goldberg. What was it's? I always forget the names. The 5 C's of Cinematography. That's really good. Why do I forget the name? It's a storyboarding book. Every time I try to remember it on stream, is like directing the story. That's it. Directing the story. Illusion of Life is pretty good, but it's not a necessary book. It's more about kind of the thought process of being an animator a little bit more than kind of learning animation. But I would recommend it. If you're just starting out, probably not at the top of the list. Let's see. I don't mean to throw even more things at you to review. Oh, no worries. But have you seen Adam Challen's compilation they released for the 3-hit combo? I think I saw that one in passing when I was going on Twitter. I'll have to double check that though. It looked really cool. I know they do a lot of really cool stuff. Adam Challenge has some really cool compilations. Now, what's my favorite short film? Mine is probably One Small Step from Taiko Studios. Oh, that's a good one. Short film? That's tough. I've got a lot. I'll have to think about that one. Let me think about it. I'll try to give you an answer. But let's keep going here while I think. So this is another thing I really loved. Is just once again leading action. So this time she's leading with her head. The head is the main leading action. Everything gets dragged from there, even the legs. And when you drag something, it doesn't mean that everything has to follow that one curve. So for example, this is the line of action, the curve, I should say, the line of motion that she's creating. But look at the legs. They flare out from there. They're still following, but they're overlapping as well. Really nice. And then she gets dragged in as well there. Okay. Now here, this is some stuff I really want to go over, is the spacing in here. It's so good. And there's a lot of different things to watch here. So first of all, kind of the global thing is his posing. Once again, you don't have to move a character all the time. And what I mean by that is, as we watch him moving here, he's not changing his posing. He's not constantly like switching his pose and doing these big changes. The one arm is moving, the rest is pretty much staying in place. That doesn't mean that it is dead though. It is reacting to what's happening. So as he moves his arm, we get that sympathetic motion in the chest. We can feel the chest rotating as he moves his arm. As he takes an impact here, we can feel that shockwave go through his body a little bit. It shakes. Once again here, he lifts his arm. We feel that whole clavicle, even though it's hidden by the cloth, that whole clavicle, the shoulder area, comes up. If that shoulder area comes up, well, that's going to add a twist to the body this way. It's not a big change, but we feel it. If that twists the body that way, well, the hips are going to get pulled over as well. They're just putting sympathetic motion in all of this. So instead of just the arm wiggling on its own, we feel like it goes right through the whole body. He's holding a pose. His feet aren't moving. The other hand isn't changing throughout the whole shot. It's just sympathetic action. But it makes the difference. It makes this shot feel alive and interesting in its simplicity. The other thing is the spacing and timing of this is very fast. So let's kind of go from one hold here. So he hits the spoon right there. It just hits there on 787. And it just holds. And you'll notice that it doesn't really move too much right there. So 787 to 789, it really doesn't move. It's just still. They're holding that pose. From there, we start the elbow moving. The elbow is the leading force here, not the shoulder, but the elbow. It comes up very fast and then hits 793. We hit here. Now that move was basically 4 frames. Elbow starts the move. 1, 2, 3, 4, done. Very fast. Then they hold. So it stays in this position from 793 all the way to 202. So almost 10 frames, 9 frames right there. The way they keep it from feeling dead is that they add a little overshoot. His arm goes a little too high and then settles back down. And then we get that little bit of a shake in there, a little kind of settle. We're just going to, and then you get that little wiggle. So it's just hitting that pose, but instead of just kind of locking in place, you get that up and then settle, the overshoot, and then that settle in there. And they hold it. Then we get this nice anticipation for this fast motion there. Another hold. Fast motion. So I love this one. The whole motion goes from 817 down, and you get all the way down here in, again, 4 frames. Just all the way down, and then they hold. So right there, 281, or sorry, 821. You get that pose there, and it holds for 4 frames. You'll notice 4 frames comes up a lot because, like we were saying before, 4 to 6 frames is the human reaction time. Anything less than 4 frames is not really readable properly by the human eye. We tend to miss things. So if a motion lasts 4 frames, it's enough for us to register. And if a hold lasts for at least 4 frames, it's enough for us to register. Now this is assuming you're playing at 24 frames per second. So with this, we get these very fast motions. Hold, fast motion. Hold, fast motion. And that's what's making this read correctly. If they were to just move without pausing for any length of time, none of this would read correctly. It would just be a mishmash of like doing this. It'd just be that. When you're doing fight choreography, make sure to incorporate the holds in there and really sell those holds. Now, as you do move, also watch your spacing. So, for example, let's look at the spacing here. We hit the top of the motion right there. As the hand comes down, you get a little bit of a tiny motion there. Fast motion. And then ease in. Look at how big those eases are in there. We're really only getting 1 frame in the middle. So when you're doing your spacing, I see a lot of people when they're trying to do fast cartoony motions, you've got your main pose. Well, actually, let's, instead of a spacing chart, let's actually do this in a different way. So if you're trying to do cartoony motion, let's say you've got, I'm just going to do a sphere here. It's going to go from here and it's going to go all the way to the end here. And we have to do it in 4 frames. So this is going to be frame 1, and then this is going to be frame 5. And then let's do down here. So you need to move that really quickly. A lot of people will try to fill as much of the middle with the spacing as possible. So you'll have 1, and then, okay, you got to ease out 2, then 3, 4, or actually let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's something like that. You can definitely see there's an ease in and ease out right there and here. And they try to space it out fairly. They're still using ease in and ease out, but it's trying to make things spread out. The reason for this, the typical kind of thought process is, if I've got a big gap, I'm going to get a pop and it's going to look weird. The problem with this is that what you're doing is you're killing your holds, because now this section here feels like a big motion versus just a little anticipation. It creates the feeling that things are always just swimming and moving around, which kills cartoony motion. Instead, you want to exaggerate that. So as it starts moving, make that move much smaller. Something like that. Barely moving out. As it eases in, same thing. Really push that so that you just get a little bit of motion, a tiny indication of where you're going to go, and you start to move. The next thing is that breakdown, don't put it in the center, right in the middle between the two. That's what's going to get you boring cartoony motion, where everything just feels it's not going to feel linear, but it's going to feel monotonous. Instead, favor one side or the other. Maybe do this. So now we've got that offset between the beginning and the end. That's going to get you something much more interesting. If we look at this, you can see from the beginning here to there, and then here, there's a little bit more space. It's not much, but there's a little bit right there compared to the ending. They're really holding those moments. Let's go for another one here. Where was the other fast motion? Right here. So if we once again look at the hand, little motion, you can see how it's overlapping its original position. Goes faster, and then really fast, eases in. Like that. This allows us to go quickly, but still register the motion. It makes it sharp but interesting, instead of just boring. Or I shouldn't say even boring. It's just, if you don't ease in enough, what you end up getting is something that feels swimmy or soft. It doesn't look cartoony and interesting. So that exaggeration is going to help. It'll also make your holds stronger, which makes the faster motions read better anyway. It's just win-win-win. Now, let's see, there's a question here. What do you mean by sympathetic motion? So sympathetic motion is motion that is inherited by something else. So for example, if I raise my arm, the action here is I'm raising my arm. But the sympathetic motion is that as I raise my arm, my shoulder has to raise as well. I can't raise my arm without raising the shoulder. Anatomically, it's impossible. As that shoulder raises, that's going to affect the chest. All of my chest muscles are being activated as I'm doing this. If that happens, then my torso is going to rotate a little bit. As my torso rotates, that's going to affect the other shoulder. It's also going to affect my hips. That's going to affect my head. So this one arm raise, the sympathetic motion, is everything that has to connect to it. Same thing if I turn my head. If I turn my head, I can try to just turn my head on its own. But if you watch the body, as I turn my head, there's a little bit of a change that happens. And the more I turn my head, the more you're going to see it. So I do that, and you can see the body rotates a little bit with it. If I raise my head up, I can feel my chest rotating up with it, just a little bit. So you get that sympathetic motion. It's something is connected to the other. If you didn't have that, that's where you get a robotic motion, where you just have these kind of, like even just doing this, I can't just do this where my hand moves separately. As I do that, watch the lower arm. You can see how it moves. That's the sympathetic motion there. So yeah, it's essentially body mechanics. When you're doing body mechanics, that is a core element of it. So idea of follow through? No, it's not follow through. It's connected. Things are connected. So if something's connected, it has to affect the other part. Let's see, can we watch it at normal speed from frame 0? Yes. So let's take a look at this whole shot again. And just watch that speed and try to focus on that spacing as it's going through. So let's hit play here. So once again, it's super fast. Like you don't notice it, but you feel it. You feel how when he's moving, it hits a pose and we read it clearly. It doesn't feel like the character's just doing this, up, down, and just wiggling. It's hold, hold, hold. It's fast, but it's clear. And then same thing here. I love this moment right here. So he comes up, and they could have easily gotten into that pose and just gone up, hit, just very fast. Instead, they hold. So we go up, hit this pose right in here, about 893, and then it's just holding. Probably I would say the hold lasts until 900, so about 7 or 8 frames, where it's still moving, it's just twisting a little bit, but it's holding that pose. It starts to move. We lead with the elbow first. You can feel that elbow leading. 1, 2, 3, hold. And then the rest is overshoot. And this is when I say you stop the motion. For me, the way I count it is if we look at this here is still kind of the same pose. We're leading with the elbow, but we're still in pose A right now. Then we transfer. We're starting to move. The hand is rotating and moving. So this is going to be the first frame of motion. 1, 2, 3, 4. At this point, the hand still moves afterwards. You can see it still overshoots. But at this point here, we're already in pose B. We're starting the hold. We get into that. And now this is the start of the pose. And from there, it's just this little overshoot. It's the continuation of the motion. It is still technically the motion, but we are now in the next pose. So we transferred through both poses in 4 frames. We still have to settle though. And then we get into a nice hold. So that's the way I typically calculate it. Because if you went by, oh, it's still moving, technically most shots never stop moving. They just keep like moving holds. They're always slightly shifting. It's almost impossible to try and delineate a time frame if you're looking at that. But if you look at when it hits a pose, you can usually find ways of timing it out a little bit more easily. So go through here. I love his expression right here. And I love how it's the ears that's kind of leading this action. So this is where you've got a small, simple motion here. Honestly, it's not that big. It's just a little bit of a head turn. But the way they lead this motion is very specific. So even with a head turn, you can lead with different parts of the head. I can lead with the top of my head. So I turn my head and I lead with the top. I can lead with my chin, like that. In this case, something happens. He doesn't see it. He hears it. His eyes are closed. There's no way he can see it. And the way he turns his head is this way. he's leading with the center of his head out and then turning. This, to an audience and just in motion, indicates that it's the ear, it's whatever he's heard that's pulling his head around. So as we look here, you can see that ear is the thing that's kind of pushing the motion the most. It's tiny, but they thought through that. As he starts reacting, we see a little bit in the eyebrows, but nothing really in the mouth and the eyes yet. They're overlapping the facial expressions. I love the lips here. The lips get dragged back. So as his head starts to turn, the lips are actually going the other way. And you just get this like really puckered face right here before they settle just a little bit. It's so good. And just look at that speed of the head turn. You get just a tiny little overshoot, just a little, it's imperceptible, just a little tiny motion right in the nose there. It keeps it nice and sharp so he's not doing this big overshoot, but it doesn't feel like it just locks off and just freezes. The hair helps a lot with that too. See. Such good posing. Look at that. Great line of action. So you've got this line of action right here. You could say you have a secondary line coming through here, and then a tertiary line going right through there. This is a great pose. And for anyone who's curious, like line of action, a lot of people when they apply line of action, they think of the one line. And as an animation student, that's kind of what you're taught at the beginning. Think of the first line right here. But as you go through, you want to think of ways you can enhance that line of action and add to it. This is where the secondary and tertiary lines come in. So for example, the way the leg comes out here, it's not just kind of like that. So you have your first primary line of action and the other line just kind of sticks out with no relation to that first line. Instead, it works off of that line. So we get our primary line here, but then we have a secondary line that kind of goes through there. We even have here a tertiary line which comes through here. Goes from one hand, even though we don't see the other, and goes through here. These are helping to enhance that form. And am I reviewing the KDA today? I was hoping to, but we've already been here for almost 2 hours just doing this one, so I might save the KDA for next stream, just because there's a lot of cool stuff in that one that I want to go over. Yeah, we've got a lot of some really overly cute music for someone who's holding a Gatling gun. So let's take a look here. We've got that kick. Great pose. Now, the thing with this pose that I really love is that they're really enhancing the line of action with the camera movement is exactly what I want to look for in the KDA shot. It's so good. Oh. That is definitely something that they had a cinematographer go through afterwards and help go put everything together. Whoever that was it's a master class. So we've got that. I love this eye dart here. Just a little tiny motion, and you can see how fast it is. We get right here, one frame, tiny little motion. Next frame, it's all the way, and then we get a tiny settle. And the settle is not even really too much in the eye, but mostly in the pupil. You can just see the pupil has this tiny little shift to it right there. So technically I would count this as a 3-frame movement. So we get 1, 2, 3. But you could even say this is a 2-frame move with this. Eye darts are fast. very rarely will you ever go above 4 frames. Eye darts are 1 to 4 frames, almost never above that. There will be moments when you can go above it, but they're very specific. And then as this happens, we get this nice sympathetic motion in the eyelids. You can feel how the eyelids, the skin right up here, is being pulled by the eyes. They're not moving 100% as if they're glued, but they're just kind of connected. It's pulling a little bit of the inner brow, just a tiny bit. And then here, this is when the rest of the brows move. So the eyes lead, and then the brows come through, and then the brows actually take more time to settle. And you can actually feel them pulling in here a few frames after. This gives that nice breakup of action. I'll never forget my first anime at uni. I had a 50 frame eye dart. My teacher said it was a little bit too long. Yeah, 50 frames, that's just a little bit, but not bad. 2 seconds. Eye darts are definitely one of the tricky things to get right, but once you master them, it adds so much to your shots. And eye darts are one of those things that stylistically we can do a lot with, especially if you look at 2D animation. There's a really great amount of variety we can add. Now, one thing I really love here is we've got this step in his brow. So he gets he goes down and then down again. So we see it here. There's pose A, pose, and I'm focusing just on the brows here. Pose B, where it kind of comes in a little bit. Everything goes down and in just a little bit. And then pose C, where it goes even more. Now, what I love about this is between pose B and C, they could have easily just gone, let's say, got A here, and it goes down to B, and then it goes down to C, like that. So it just kind of holds. Well, let's actually add a little hold here. So it holds on B, and then like that, just stepping down. And that could have been great. But they added a micro anticipation. If we look here, it goes into pose B right there. And then right here, you can feel those brows raising up before coming down. And they go in an arc, a tiny, tiny little arc. Where as they come up, they go up this way. And then they come back down this way. So we're not just getting the brows doing doot, 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 and kind of in a zigzag. Let's doot, 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 like that. It's going down, around, and then down again. And instead of this kind of boring A, B, C, we're going A, B, it holds, and then C. We get that. It's not a huge difference, but it just makes it that much more interesting to look at. And it adds that extra little flourish. It's not much. Like, we don't see it, and it's not like it's the brows are wiggling, but it makes it just visually dynamic. If we look at that, you can kind of feel that little pause, anticipation, and then it makes that hit feel stronger when he actually gets angry. That anticipation is nice. Let's see, how long do you plan on streaming today? I usually stream for about 3 hours, so probably another hour or so. I know I've got a quick demo for, what was it? Blaze had asked for a demo on... I remember that I had to do a demo. I remember exactly on what topic. I'll have to look back in the chat. And then I did want to take a look at someone's work. They had asked something about selecting Geo. Yeah, it's right at the beginning. Let me double check so I don't forget. Oh no, actually, oh dang it, I can't go back in the history far enough. Yeah, I'll just have to try and remember. But yeah, it's probably about another hour or so. Saturdays are usually a work day. How to select lock geometry. That's it. Thank you for the reminder. And you had something with Geo, and that's all I had. So let's keep watching this and see what else we can kind of spot here. Oh, I love that. You know, at the start of this demo, I thought, okay, I'm going to pick a scene at the beginning, a scene in the middle, a scene at the end. So far, I think we've analyzed almost every single scene. We're not even halfway through. Just so sad. There were so many things I wanted to talk about later, too. So what I love about this is just the expression changes, the speed of them, the way they are pushing the facial poses, and the variation in the timing in things. So let's kind of look at the expressions first. So with the expression here, they start with this really compressed expression. Everything's kind of coming into the center here, right there, pushing the strain in the face. I also love how she's actually biting her bottom lip. That's just a great little detail. Whenever you can have a character interacting with their face in those ways, it just makes it feel really good. But then as she pulls back, we get that nice little anticipation. Her body is starting to come back down here. Her head actually overlaps that. So as her body pulls down, she's leading with her hips down here. The body overlaps, the head overshoots. You get a nice little bit of a kind of up motion before it comes down. It just makes it more interesting. Instead of just having the whole character slide back, you get a little bit of a head drag. Makes it really interesting. Then as the head drags, they're using that moment as the head starts to come down to let the brows come up. It creates this countering motion, and it makes the brow motion, or the brow pose, the brows change, even though it's small. Instead of just being a random just that where the brows come up, suddenly, because it's tied into the other motion, it's hitting an accent. Instead of just being a random motion, it is accenting the pull back, which is great. They could have had the brows come up before the motion or after the motion, but by timing it the way they did, it accents the motion, which is fantastic. And this is where in our reference, we want to, if we have our reference, for example, if I was to do that motion, I might go like have my brows and go up and then pull back. And maybe that's how I shot my reference. But we don't want to copy our reference. We want to enhance. So I might retime the brows from my reference to try and hit that beat a little stronger. It also helps to add kind of a stretch pose. The face, the head is skull. Like there's not really many ways, unless you've got a really cartoony shot, that we can stretch the face. With the arm, this is a squash pose, this is a stretch pose. With the body, squash, stretch. Shoulders, we can squash and stretch. With the face, we can't really squash and stretch. We can use the jaw a little bit to stretch there, but the rest of the face doesn't really have it. So to enhance the drag, they can use the brows. That's the squash and stretch of the face. And you can see here, as she comes down, we get this would be the stretch. As it comes down and swoops up, the brows go down. This is the squash, the overlap, before coming back up here. It's very subtle, but the way they're timing it with the head move takes these facial changes and enhances both the movement and the facial poses. Makes it more interesting to look at. And let's see, do her eyes go uneven? I believe, let's see, do they? No, they're pretty on focus there. At that frame, do you think they move it up at all? It's basically, let's see which frame right here. The eyes are just focused on a distance. So this is where, as we're posing eyes, we have to be very conscious of where the character is looking. So the further you look at something in the distance, your eyes are going to separate outwards. In this case, she's looking at the guy inside. So her eyes are a little bit further out. as she's coming in, her eyes are going to refocus into the center because now she's looking at something close to her right here. So now the eyes are actually pointing ever so slightly inwards. If the character was thinking internally, so for example, I'm looking at the screen and then, oh, wait, did I do that thing? And I'm just trying to remember something. I'm not looking at anything in particular. Your eyes will tend to cross even more when you're thinking internal thoughts. Not like crossed, like pointing inwards, but the eyes are just going to ever so slightly shift in. When you look back out, they go out. So you can see that here, when she looks out, suddenly the eyes, I'm going to exaggerate this here, have a little bit more of that look to them. They're not pointed inwards, so they're not doing kind of this. It's further out. Then she comes back in. They're pointing inwards. It shows that distance. And it's something that it's subtle, and oftentimes most people won't realize what's causing it, but it'll feel like the character isn't alive. It'll feel like the character is a puppet. Really focusing on those little eye changes makes a big difference in creating a character that feels like they're living in the environment that they're in. I love her facial pose here. Just how high that lip is going right there. And the timing of the hits. Let's actually time that out. It's actually like you get the pose here. Up, one frame, down. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Is one frame. Just there's no in-betweens. And it feels so good. Now, the way they make this work, because normally something like that fast would just pop like crazy. The reason this works is that they overlap the forms. So we've got the main form of the fist there. It goes up. You can see it doesn't break away from the original form here. Comes down, it's still overlapping. Comes up, still overlapping. It never does something like this where it's down here and then the next frame is up here with no overlap whatsoever. There's always an overlap between the two poses. So something like that. And the next frame is going to be something like this. They're touching. That is very important. It keeps this, keeps the motion easy to read so our eyes can follow it. And when we play it back at speed, it creates kind of this motion blur effect where it's just... And our eyes can focus on the motion without being lost. Do I do this every day? No, I try to do movie reviews, or sometimes I'll do movies, sometimes I'll do shorts, things like that. I try to do it at least once a week if I can. It depends on what I'm working on. Usually it'll be like every 2 weeks or something. Usually on the streams, I'll do a mixture of things like actual animation demos where I'm animating, we'll analyze animations, we'll do reviews, all sorts of different things. Or if anyone has demo requests, I'm happy to record a demo for people as well. Basically, whatever we can do to learn animation and kind of enhance our animation knowledge. So let's see, what else can we look at here? There's so many different things. We can look at the eye dart. Again, watch the eyes. So she's leading with her head here. This is great. This is something, again, I talk about to my students a lot, is think of what's leading when you're moving the head and having a character react to something. So, for example, let's go full screen here so we can see the eyes a little bit better, unless I squint. So if I'm going to turn my head, the way I lead with the eyes or the head will determine my thought process, or what the audience registers as my thought process. So, for example, if a character is interested in what they're going to look at, so maybe something's happening over there and I'm like really excited, what's going to happen is my eyes are going to lead first. So I'm going to look over in the direction and then my head will turn. If you're not interested in the thing that you're turning your head to, or you're more interested in the thing that you're already looking at, your head will start to turn first. So if something's like, let's say I'm working on my animation, I'm concentrating really hard, and someone's calling off to the side and asking me to look at something, it's like, okay, sure, give me one moment. And then my eyes turn. So my eyes are focused as my head starts to turn. Then then they go. By doing that, you can show the audience what the character is prioritizing, what their thought process is. If you move everything at the same time, this creates a mechanical, boring look. And it's actually very hard to do, because the only time that'll happen is if I'm totally not focused, and then I move my head, and I'm really trying to not focus on anything in my room here, in my office. And I try to do that, and there's no thought process there. It's just me kind of going, which could be great for certain moments, but normally, even if I'm doing that, my eyes are going to be jumping from thing to thing in the room as my head is moving. So we want to think about that. In this case, they are thinking about that. She's looking at this person. So she comes in like really happy. Oh, yay, we're going on an adventure. She looks at him and she's turning her head, and you can see that her head is leading the motion, but it's leading let me clarify this. It's moving down, but the main head motion is not her looking down. It's just kind of the dragging motion. The eyes come down, and then the head settles. So it's the eyes first, then the head settles. The rest of the motion is technically the drag. So the eyes are leading first. She's looking at this guy and then going, okay, let's focus on the tablet. She's happy. Then we have the eyes lead. Oh, she notices something out of the corner of her eye, and oh, wait, he's still angry at me. And then here we have the head leading the action. You can see it's starting to tilt down, and then the eyes follow. She's watching the person that's probably about to kill her or pick up the sword first. So we have that little breakup in action. We've got 3 eye darts here, and each one of them tells us a little bit more about the character and what their thought process is. When we play it back at speed, we don't really see it, but we feel it. We feel that little bit of a head lead down before the eyes go, or the eyes lead up before the head does anything. And where do I teach? I teach at Animation Mentor. It's an online animation school. I was a student there many years ago, and now I'm teaching there, which is really fun. Head movement plus eye movement. Yeah, so you want to really think of those. Really focus on why your character is looking in the directions that they are and what their thought process would be in those moments. Now let's see, what else can we take a look at here. Okay, so this one, I just wanted to take a quick look at one small thing here, which is the grab. We were talking about holding poses many times already. This grab, they could have easily just animated this shooting out and just doing this kind of, and just an arc. So it holds, grab, comes back. Watch what they actually do here to make this read more dynamically and more visually appealing, or in a visually appealing way. So it reaches out, and you feel that kind of hold, or move, hold, throw, hold, drop, hold. We get that little bit of a feeling versus just one quick even motion. So the hand comes up here. It once again holds the pose. So we get this frame right here, 67. It's holding this pose, and it holds that for about 7-8 frames, somewhere around there. So this is we're starting to see a little bit of motion, but it's still in that pose. Now, as they're animating this, I love how they're offsetting things, where instead of everything just going straight out, watch this. It's holding. The wrist is coming forward, the palm. The fingers are dragging back because they're going to overlap. And the rest of the arm here, because it's kind of shooting out, is recoiling already. So instead of the whole thing just going forward in a boring way, we get this nice breakup of motion on this one frame. And then this goes forward, fingers still going back, thumb goes back, arm goes out. What this is doing is it's enhancing that feeling of relaxed grab. It opens up the hand, which will make the grab much clearer when we get over here. So it goes through, and then it holds this pose here. So I would say probably 81 right there. This would be the start of the hold. And you could even say 80. We'll say 80. And then it just stays there. We get a little anticipation here to the drop, a little. So about 3 frames. It's not much. 3-4 frames. But it holds just a little bit before the drop so that we can register what's happened. And kind of, it gives an anticipation to the grab. It's a little bit cartoony. This is not what would happen in real life. But it's an exaggeration. It makes it feel more interesting. Let's see. What about the frame? It's a blur, no in-betweens. I'm not sure exactly which frame you're talking about. If it's like right in here, we can see a little bit of motion blur right on there. Usually when I consider a hold is until the pose changes in a dramatic way, or it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be like there and then totally different pose. But for example, here, if we look at the spacing, at this point, the hand is pretty much in place and the fingers have almost stopped. So I would say probably around 80 is when it kind of gets into that position. With motion blur, you can kind of count it as the moment that the motion blur eases and you can register the pose clearly. So right around there. And then as it falls, you can feel that motion blur happening again right here. So that pose is starting to change. We also see that rotation starting to kick in. So at this point, it's starting the motion. It's not holding the pose anymore. Honestly, when it gets into certain subtle motions, it's very subjective of when does the hold actually start? When does the motion start? There's no like clear cut, it has to be here. It's what we feel. It's an art form. There's no specific answer. Now it hits here. And then once again, we get a little bit of a hold right there on the hand. And this is a great little touch where the hand holds as he's pulling back here. So what this is doing is not only enhancing the grab, so we can feel the grab hit, we feel the fingers curl in. Once the fingers curl in, then his arm moves here. So what it's doing is it's leading our eyes back to the character. If we watch what is moving the most, he fires. The hand is moving the most. The body doesn't move very much. It goes, comes it through here. The hand still moving the most. The body doesn't really do much other than a little bit of tiny recoil motion, which is really nice. Hand drops, the body barely moves. Look at that reaction again. It's just some sympathetic motion. Fingers curl. And after the fingers curl, then suddenly the body is moving a lot and the hand doesn't move very much at all. Until he pulls back, his body stays still, the hand moves. This lets us focus on the different parts. So our eyes can easily go from the hand to the body and then back to the hand. And then when it gets pulled in, back to the body. So we're not bouncing around. Like if I'm doing this, for example, which hand do you focus on? It's hard to see. But if I move one hand a lot here and then move that and then move that, you can lead the audience's eye across the screen easily by letting the motion dictate where the eye is going to fall. So by using that along with the timing, they really get a nice appealing shot here. This is so good. Okay, there's one more thing I want to take a look at here, and then see. There's a few different things, but I don't know how much longer I should keep going here. How much is too much? Yeah, motion to guide the eye. Exactly. That's exactly it. So what I love is the timing right here. Timing of this missile just firing out, and how the characters react in a delayed way. So we can feel that missile. We can see it actually right there coming through. It fires through, and look at when the characters start to react. So with the robot, it's kind of easy. This is the moment that he reacts on frame 74. That missile was passing him about 4 frames before that. We could see it right here. Actually 6 frames. So it takes him 6 frames to realize that the missile has shot past him. Same thing here. He only reacts right there. This is his reaction. 1 frame after the robot. She only reacts right here. So this is her reaction right there, which is 2 frames after his reaction. They're not all reacting at the same time. It's ever so slightly offset, and creates a more dynamic feeling that this thing has shot past all of them, and because of their spatial distance, everyone's going to react a little bit differently. The robot's going to react first because it passed him first, and then it goes through. And by not having them react the moment that the missile is right next to them, it creates the feeling that it's an actual real reaction instead of a choreographed reaction. I wish game had the same graphics and animation. One day, honestly, with the PS5, we're gonna be seeing some really good animation. Like I just saw an animation test where they were doing some live clothing tests where in game in Unreal Engine 4 you can have actual clothing that wrinkles and like moves while you're playing, not like the typical simulation, but actual like cloth sim, and it was so cool. So we're getting there. We're very close to getting this in game. What's the difference, or what about the difference in robot head movement and human head movement? That's actually a good question. So the big thing with robot and human motion is going to be the lack of sympathetic motion. So lack of sympathetic motion and the reduction of arcs. So for example, as a human, we'll have big arcs in our head motions typically, and we're going to have sympathetic motion. So if I move my arm, everything else moves. And you can kind of see it here where he's just tilting his head over and everything moves. The body is moving. You can feel the arm come up over here. The other arm comes down. You can even feel his legs shift as he moves. It's all sympathetic motion. With the robot, it raises its shoulder here. It's lifting this big, heavy arm. This is a heavy thing. But look at how the body moves. It's stiff. There's still some sympathetic motion in there. It's not totally locked off, but we don't get that subtle twisting in there. The body kind of just drops down, very simply. The head, because of the way it's built onto the body, is going to lead the motion here, and the body's going to come up, but we lack that sympathetic motion of the twist in there. It's still in there a little bit. It's not gone completely, but it's going to be exaggerated more or less depending on the character. It's also the style of shot. So some robots are going to be very stiff and straight and janky. So what I mean by janky is like they'll move and then you're going to get that little and shake afterwards. Kind of like they're old and rusty. Whereas humans will tend to have a little bit more of a natural movement. Now, to be fair, that's very subjective. You can have robots that are very overly smooth, too smooth, and you can have people that are shaky and like old, and their motions are maybe not robotic, but like less coordinated. So the missile goes through, it hits. I love how it's very hard to see, but there's actually a smiley face right here. You can just see it ever so slightly. And that implosion. It goes out and then so cool. And then they react. And this is probably one of my favorite things in this whole thing is her jump right here. When I first saw this, it was just like, this was the moment that I went, I've got to analyze this. I've got to scrub through this and figure out why this looks so good. And it's really just that they hold the pose. She jumps through here, so she's running. It's just a run cycle. I say just, it's a really good run cycle. She runs through. We get this nice anticipation pose here where everything's kind of crouched down. You've got this line of action going through here. Very simple. Big anticipation. The arm, I love how it's coming up right there. And we've got this secondary line of action going through both arms. She jumps up. We get the stretch pose. So whenever you're doing a jump, it's good to get a stretch pose in there. It gives the energy into the pose. Our line of action is kind of twisting around with the pose. So you can see here how coming through, getting this nice twist in the character. And then she just hits this pose, like right around frame 69 right there. She hits this beautiful pose. Wonderful line of action. You've got kind of the secondary line, the tertiary line comes through all there. It's fantastic. This is just super dynamic, and they hold it. They just let that pose come in here, and then so from 69, they just hold it all the way, like I would say probably to 73. So for 4 frames, they're holding that pose. Even as she falls, they're leading with the hips. The hips lead first, and you can feel the other leg and arm dragging behind that. So that everything kind of just, at this point, just falls in, and there's just this one leading point. All the lines come down through there. It's very simple, but it feels so good. And when I say simple, it doesn't mean that, oh yeah, this would be a breeze to animate. Haha, not a problem. No. The concepts are simple. They're not doing anything super crazy. They're not doing anything that's like magic and hitting a magic button to create these cool effects. All it is pushing the anticipation, pushing the contrast in the pose to get this really nice big stretch, which then makes this pose, which is kind of, it's not really a squash, but kind of a relaxed pose, even more dynamic in comparison. And holding that pose, they made an amazing pose that they held. And you could even say that the pose starts to hold a little sooner than it does, like maybe around 68, and then everything else is, yeah. So it's about 4 frame hold, and that's it. That's really it. And then when they falls, they're leading with the hips, letting everything else drag from there. That's it. And then another thing, we've kind of talked about the leading force, but when you stop a pose, it's the same thing. Don't stop everything at the same time. So here, as she's swinging forward, her chest is actually stopping its motion right around here from 66, or torso, the twist. Even the hips kind of stop right around there. As that's going, the arm keeps flowing through, the leg keeps kicking up. As the arm stops right around 69, the leg is still going upwards ever so slightly. So everything's not just kind of moving and then locks into place. You get that stop of the chest, then the arms, and then this nice little offset. So even though we're hitting the pose on 69, some things have actually stopped before that, some are stopping a little after that. That creates this dynamic feeling and keeps the hold from just feeling like it just snaps into a pose and then snaps out of a pose. Is it okay to use just one run cycle for all running shots, or do you need to create multiple run cycles? It depends on what you're working on. So for most games, you're going to have, well, I shouldn't say most anymore. Because games are getting more and more advanced, usually there's multiple run cycles. At the minimum, you'll just have one run cycle for a simple game. For more kind of like the AAA kind of games, like the new Spider-Man game and all of those, there's going to be multiple run cycles. If it's for an animation like this, for something like this, they probably didn't have any run cycles. I would not think so. They probably just animated the runs for each case, because they are kind of doing a lot of, well, actually, maybe not. Maybe they would have had a cycle. Hard to say. You would probably have at least one cycle that you could just tweak yourself afterwards. So, yeah, it's hard to say. For most shorts, you don't usually get a cycle. For films, you might get a walk cycle, maybe a run cycle. For this, they might have a cycle on certain characters, like the ninja guy. He does a very specialized run. They might have a cycle for him. Without a cycle, they might just be copying animation from one scene to the next. It is nice to have cycles, though, I will say that. Whenever you're animating a lot of runs, like a run here and then a run in the next shot and a run in the next shot, it's nice to just be able to use that as a base and then, hey, done. It's not done, but you get started at least. You're not having to start from scratch all the time. So I think those are the main scenes that I wanted to talk about. There's a lot here in this fight that we could go over as well, but we're already 2.5 hours into this. One thing I did want to talk about very quickly, just because it kind of goes into what we talked about regarding holds already, is, I think it was right after this. Yeah, right after this. It's so good. The timing of those bullet hits felt really good, and the camera shake right here. So as we're going through, we've got this really dynamic shot where this person is coming in towards camera and zooming in, and then she gets grabbed midway, and we need to be able to read that clearly. The way they do that is if we watch the spacing of the face and the clarity of the face. It's coming through over here, moving, faster, and then right here you can see the face is very much motion blurred. It's still moving, and then right here it stops and it holds for about 4 frames. 4, always 4, before it starts to move and suddenly it's gone. So if we look at the spacing here, you can see fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would probably not count this one actually, just because we can't read the expression. So 1, 2, 3, 4, gone. So 4 to 6 frames. It's kind of a little bit of a magic number. Does it mean that we always have to do that? No. We can hold longer. But as long as you get that minimum of 4, suddenly You get that readability in the face, where we see that expression just a little bit before it's gone. So many good things in here. We could keep talking about this for forever. But hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that made sense. A lot of this is something I would recommend you all do in your own time, is when you see something that you really enjoy, for example, this shot here, or any animation you see, whether it's a film or whatnot, if you have time, watch it again and analyze why. Why did that feel good to you? Why did the animation stand out? What made it work? It's a very important thing to enhance your skills, because as animators we can learn all the mechanics, we can learn all the schooling, I guess you could say. But on top of that, what will make you an even better animator is studying the things that you're inspired by. Not only will that allow you to learn from the masters, that's why they're called master studies, but it will also allow you to develop a style of animation that you are proud of, because it's going to be built off the things that inspire you, versus just an animation style that is, for lack of a better term, vanilla. Like, oh, you learn how to animate and that's like, you know how to do the basic eye blink, you know how to do the basic motions. If you're really interested in, like, you're just inspired by old, like, 1920s style animation, the noodle limb kind of old Disney animations, study those. What makes those feel so good to you? And try to incorporate that into your work. If you prefer the more, like, stylized animations that we have here, like the League of Legends stuff, analyze that. If you love the Jurassic Park heavy creatures, Pacific Rim, analyze those, try to incorporate that, and you can start building that unique workflow and unique style that is all you. Plus, it makes you a more versatile animator, and it's fun, which is really